Hello, welcome. Today what we are doing is going over effective annual rates. And what an effective annual rate is it's the amount that you are actually paying, the true amount paid. Because when you just take a yearly interest rate and you divide it by, say, 12 into a monthly payment, it doesn't give us exactly the amount that we pay. So what we're using here is that effective annual rate, and that is what we are evaluating because there's a whole variety of different ways that we can actually state interest rates. Now, this is an important thing for your own benefit and for consumer protection in general, is that there are a number of lenders out there that will state rates in a different way when in reality they're doing things dishonestly. Okay, so the effective annual rate is the rate that is actually being paid. So when we're looking at that effective annual rate, is let's say that we're looking at something is that the number of times that we have a compounding occur. Okay, so if we're looking at something where we have yearly compounding, okay, which means that just once a year we get a certain amount of interest accrued. Okay, let's say that we have $100 that we are sticking into an account. Okay, and at yearly compounding, okay, we take our $100 and let's say that we are at a 10%, well, we'll say a 10% interest rate. Okay, so we're going to go 1 plus 0.1, right? 1 plus r to the first because it's one time period away. That means that at the end of the year, we're going to end up with $110, right? So we know that that's pretty straightforward. That's really easy to look at what we're doing. And then if we're going to try and figure out what are the actual amount that we received in interest, the effective rate that we received, is that we look at it in just the same way that we would have with computing yield, right? New minus old over old. Okay, so that would be the 110 minus 100 divided by 100 multiplied by 100, right? Just to get in the right terms. And so that means, right, 10%. Exactly the same as our simple rate, right? We said R is equal to 10%. Same exact thing as our simple rate. And that one, there's not a difference, so it doesn't really matter. However, this does differ when we go to a shorter time period between compounding. So we'll go to semi-annual compounding. Okay. Under semi-annual compounding, we're still taking that same $100, okay, but we are compounding interest every 6 months. So after the end of 6 months is we're going to accrue some interest, and then we're going to accrue some interest again in 1 year. So what we're going to do here is we're going to figure out what the value is, but we take that 10% interest rate, and what do we do to it? We divide it by 2, okay, because we need to figure out what the semi-annual interest rate is. Semi-annual interest rate comes in 6 months, right? So we don't get the full year's interest in 6 months. We only get 6 months of interest. So we take the yearly rate, which is 10%, divided by 2, okay? And that tells us, right, so that's going to be 5%. So that says in 6 months, we are going to have $105, right? We are going to collect $5 in interest, okay? Now then we are looking at it for the next 6 months, okay? For the next 6 months. So we left all this money in the account. So how much interest are we actually going to accrue in the second 6 months, okay? Your first thought might be, oh, another $5. But that's not entirely accurate, right? Because the second 6 months, we have that $105, and then we're still multiplying it by the same thing we just did there, that 5%. And so what we can do is we can pull out a trusty calculator. For this question, we can use an old calculator like this. Alternatively, we can use our financial calculator. But we're going to take in our $105 and multiply it by the 1.05%. And so that means that at the end of the year, we're going to have $110.25. Okay? So how much interest did we accrue here? Right? So we started with 105, we ended with 110.25. That means that we have accrued $5.25 in interest. Okay, we earned more interest in the second 6 months than we did in the first 6 months. Okay, So we now need to figure out, hey, how much exactly did we earn in interest? What was our interest rate here? Okay, so we do it the same way we did up in this part up here, new minus old over old. Okay, so 110.25 minus 100 divided by 100 multiplied by 100, right? And so that tells us 10.25% is our effective annual rate for semi-annual compounding. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that whenever we're looking at compounding, the more often you compound, the higher the effective rate is going to be. Okay? So, all right, let's formalize this a little bit more. Okay? So if we're computing an effective annual rate, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to look at, okay, we are going to take basically our 1 plus r framework. So it's going to be 1 plus r, and this r we are using, this is the quoted annual rate, okay, the simple rate, and that is divided by our number of periods, okay, and then we raise that to the number of periods in the year. Okay, so what you notice is that these right here, number of periods is there, number of periods is here, is that they are both the same values put up on the same thing, same side. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is that we have to subtract off 1 off of that, because basically we have this 1 out here, we have to subtract the 1 off over here. Okay, so our number of periods, okay, if we are talking about annual, how many is that? That's going to be 1 period. Okay, for semi-annual, how many semi-annual periods are there in a year? There are 2, right? There's a 6 months at the beginning of the year, 6 months at the end of the year. And then if we go quarterly, how many is that? That's going to be 4, right? If we go monthly, that's going to be 12. And if we go daily, okay, in finance, typically we're going to end up using 360, but generally speaking, you can use 365. The numbers, it doesn't really make that much difference in the calculations themselves. But generally speaking, in finance, we use the number 360 just because it's evenly divisible, and it makes things a little bit clearer. But what we do is that we take 1 plus, right? So if we are looking at a semi-annual, right, we're going to take our interest rate, right, divided by 2 and raise to the second power. The reason we divide it by 2 is that we have to get into a semi-annual rate. So this gives us our semi-annual rate. Okay, and then we have to take this by the number of time periods, right? So if we're getting a semi-annual rate, we're compounding for 6 months, we have to compound it for the second 6 months. Okay, the next lecture is going to talk about how we actually do some of these effective annual rate calculations.